Hello friends, and welcome to Webronaq. Here is a question that sounds almost too simple. Earlier this month, on June 1, 2026, OpenAI's GPT 5.5 became available on Amazon Bedrock. Developers who wanted to move their apps from OpenAI's own servers to Amazon's cloud had to change exactly one line of code, the base URL. That is it. Same SDK, same function calls, same response format. A completely different cloud provider underneath. How is that even possible? The answer is an API. In this video we are going to break down exactly what an API is, how a request and response works, and why that single URL swap made perfect sense to anyone who understands the concept. Let's get into it. Alright, so what actually is an API? API stands for Application Programming Interface. That sounds technical, so let's cut it down. An API is a contract between two pieces of software. One side makes a request. The other side fulfills it and sends back a response. Neither side needs to know how the other one works internally. Think of it like ordering at a restaurant. You tell the waiter what you want. The waiter carries your order to the kitchen. The kitchen prepares the food. You never see the kitchen, and the kitchen never sees you directly. The API is that waiter, the defined channel through which two parties communicate. One side is called the client, the side making the request. The other is the server, the side responding. That middle layer, the API, defines the rules for how they talk. Now let's see what that conversation actually looks like. Now look at this. Every API interaction has two parts, a request going out and a response coming back. The request has four key ingredients. First, the method, usually get to fetch data or POST to send it. Second, the endpoint, a URL pointing to the specific resource you want, like fetching current weather for London. Third, headers, which carry metadata like your API key for authentication. Fourth, the body, optional data you send along, not needed for a simple GET. The server receives all of that, does its work, and sends back a response. The response has a status code, where 200 means success, and a body containing your data, almost always formatted as JSON, a structured text format that any programming language can read. So your app gets back a clean package, city, temperature, condition. That is the full cycle. And next, let's look at a real API call you can run right now. Here is the interesting part. Let's look at actual code calling GPT 5.5 on Amazon Bedrock today. You import Bedrock OpenAI from the OpenAI Python SDK. You create a client, pointing it at the AWS region US East 2. That one line is the magic. The constructor sets the base URL to Bedrock's endpoint instead of OpenAI's own servers. Then you call client.responses.create, pass the model ID open.i.gpt 5.5, and send your input text. That is the entire API call. The SDK, the method names, the response structure, all identical to calling OpenAI directly. The only thing that changed was where the client pointed. This is exactly the power of a well-designed API. The interface stays stable. The implementation underneath can live on a completely different cloud. Now let's zoom out and see why this pattern shows up everywhere in the software world. Alright, so why does this matter beyond one cool migration story? Because this pattern is everywhere. Stripe, the payments company, versions its API with date-based names. The current version is the 27th of May 2026. Dahlia, passed as a request header, so your app always knows exactly what behavior to expect. GitHub's REST API works the same way. You pass the version the 10th of March 2026 in the GitHub API version header. Amazon Bedrock lets you swap between Anthropic, Meta, and now OpenAI models just by changing the model ID in your request. Same API, totally different AI underneath. And APIs don't last forever. OpenAI announced on June 3rd that its v1/prompts endpoint is deprecated, with a shutdown date of November 30th, 2026. APIs evolve, version, and retire. Teams that understand this build software that plugs into any service cleanly, without rewriting everything when the underlying system changes. And that brings us to the big mental model we want you to walk away with. So let's bring it all together. An API is a stable contract between two pieces of software. One side makes a request with a method, an endpoint, headers, and a body. The other side sends back a status code and structured data. The client never sees how the server works internally, and the server never needs to know who is calling. That is why developers moved GPT 5.5 to a new cloud by changing one URL. The contract held. The implementation moved. Here is your pattern for spotting APIs anywhere. When you see a service where swapping a URL or a credential switches the whole provider underneath, you are looking at a well-designed API. Stripe, GitHub, Bedrock, your weather widget, your login button. All of it runs on this idea. Thanks for watching. If this clicked for you, hit subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.